So I don't know if you're aware, but the final season of Elite season 8 is out next week. Nobody knows how the show has made it past season 3, and I have no idea how I've been following it for 7 seasons, but here we are. I know that some of the OG characters might be coming back for the finale, so if you want to catch up, but you don't have 8 hours to watch all of season 7, then I got you. Onto the video. So remember at the end of season 6, while Issa and Didak were kissing, there was a drive-by shooting by the school. We're continuing with that storyline. There's obviously some drama at school because of it. Some parents are complaining because this is connected somehow to Didak's brother and they want Didak kicked out of school, but eventually they vote to keep him at the school and Didak can stay. The opening scene of season 7 is Omar watching the news about the shooting, and I'm guessing it's the same one. Anyway, he's been in therapy and he's struggling with panic attacks, and he considers going back on medication because it doesn't seem like he's making enough progress. One of the new girls, Chloe, at school has a sex tape leaked, but she acts as though she's not concerned about it at all. Chloe's mom also is kind of weird. She's flirting with some guy, and then Chloe walks in and kind of flirts with him as well, which makes her mom a bit jealous, and later her mom tries to seduce that same guy wearing a Las Encinas uniform. Is this Chloe's school uniform? It could be. Anyway, as we all know, the parents have been and continue to be messy on the show. It gets worse, trust me. So remember that Ivan was hit by a car last season and he was left unconscious and he ended up in hospital? Well, he's back now, and Issa and the kids at school throw him a little welcome home party. Ivan had previously told Patrick that he wanted to be left alone, but when he came out of his coma, the first words that he said, well, the first name that he uttered was Patrick. But remember, Patrick, Ari, and I guess Mencia left town last season with their dad. The car that hit Ivan was Patrick's, and Sarah, as in Raul and Sarah, was driving it. She was the one who accidentally hit Ivan, but she and her boyfriend Raul set up the scene to make it seem like it was Mencia who did it. To everyone else though, this was a hit and run and they don't know who did it. But right now, Patrick is the main suspect. Anyway, Ivan tells the group that he doesn't think that Patrick did that Patrick ran him over, but Raul was like, well, he did leave town suddenly, which is pretty weird. Sarah, who obviously knows the truth, starts to feel guilty and she, offers some comforting words to Ivan, and then she leaves the room and Raul follows her and he scares her into keeping her quiet. Then he also tries to reason with her and tells her to just trust him. Remember, he hits her and he controls her. This is a rotten, toxic, abusive relationship. Omar goes to another school now, but he gets an opportunity to get a paid internship at Las Encinas, but he refuses. That place reminds him too much of his trauma. He doesn't want to go back. We get another new character this season, which is so annoying, but okay. Nico's cousin Eric is fresh out of jail because of his political activism / hooliganism. Nico's parents decide to take him in, and his father doesn't think it'll be good for Nico, but his mother insists, after all, this is her nephew. And his parents are MIA. Ivan is listening to a voicemail from Patrick saying goodbye and that he will always love him until they see each other again. And Ivan had ordered some pizza, and the pizza delivery guy comes in, but Ivan falls before he can get to the door. The guy comes in then and he helps Ivan up, and that's when Ivan asks him to stay for pizza. The new characters, Eric and Chloe, start flirting. She's mostly making the moves on him, and she shows him the video of her, as in the leaked sex video. She comes on kind of strong. Her hypersexual nature really concerns me. I mean, she could just be having fun, but I think there's a lot more going on there. Anyway, she and Eric hook up in the toilet stall, and she records them. So yeah, there's definitely something wrong. He tries to get to know her, but she doesn't seem interested at all. And it all comes out that she was the one who leaks her own videos. She later tells her mom that she'll find a rich guy at Las Encinas. And then, in a shock, it turns out that her mother is Ivan's lost long mother. So Chloe and Ivan are brother and sister. They're siblings. Ivan and the pizza guy, Joel, talk quite a bit and they connect and they end up making out, but Joel breaks it off saying that he can't do this. Ivan says, well, they can just be friends, and he also wants to help Joel out. He offers him some financial support. Issa and Didak talk and he still wants to try, but she thinks that the universe is trying to tell them something. They can't. They do end up kissing and sleeping together, but she feels uncomfortable. Remember, she was assaulted last season and she feels triggered and she can't, so she stops. He's there for her, he comforts her, and he says that it's just that she's not ready yet, and that's fine. Like, he's not going anywhere. By the way, these two are gonna break up and reconcile several times throughout this season. But I've come round to her character. I really like her. So it turns out that pizza guy, Joel, is actually in a relationship and lives with Omar. And Ivan has hooked him up, Joel, with a spot at Las Encinas. I guess Ivan has forgotten all about Patrick, whose name was the first thing he said when he came out of a coma. I kind of hate that Elite always does this with them, like making them seem to be some kind of endgame and then just giving us nonsense and distractions. Anyway, Joel gets a tour of school from Ivan on his first day, and Omar decides to also return to Las Encinas as well for the internship. He decides to take it after all. At the end of the episode, it turns out that the new academic director of the school is actually an undercover cop, and he's investigating some kind of crime ring, possibly involving Didak's brother and Isa's parents. In episode 2, we find out that it was Samuel's death that was the cause of Omar's PTSD symptoms. He goes to the bathroom, he's struggling at school, and he takes some meds against the advice of his therapist. Remember, Samuel died in Omar's arms. Ivan is doing way too much, buying Joel a suit for a charity horse race. Joel feels uncomfortable at first, but he eventually takes Ivan to the change room and starts changing in front of him, and he says that, so that Ivan can see how the suit fits. Yeah, sure, Joel. It just so happens that Omar is having his moment in the same bathroom. Ivan sees him and he's happy to see him again at school because he obviously doesn't know that that he and Joel are together. And Joel is kind of outed for being a little bit of a lying sneak and a cheat, but they're all chill, and Joel hasn't really done anything, to be fair. Well, debatable. We get a memory of Isa's mother being confronted by Didak's father, accusing her of being behind the shooting. And she also doesn't want Didak and Isa to be together. They seem to be business rivals, the Capulets and the Montagues. I mean, Didak and Isa's families. Something is going on with Sarah. It's like she's itching a lot, she's stressed. It could be because of her guilty conscience of what happened with Ivan, but it could also just be hives because she's in a really toxic relationship at home. One of her teachers raises concerns about her rash and the fact that she's underperforming in one of her classes, but she brushes it off and says she just has allergies. Joel tells Omar that he needs a supportive boyfriend who's happy for him and not a stage 5 clinger. He's not happy that Omar is suddenly at the school as well. And yeah, Omar has been a little bit clingy. Chloe is up to her attention-seeking antics. What is she wearing? She's just wearing a bra at school pretty much. Isa has horses at home that her mother wants to race again, against Isa's will. And Didak suggests kidnapping one of the horses and taking her to a sanctuary so that she won't be forced to race. By the way, Chloe wants to hook up with Ivan as a challenge. And sure, he's gay, but remember Ivan also got Ari pregnant when they were sleeping together, so it's not like he's not attracted to women as well. But this could be her brother, so yeah, there's that. Harman, Ivan's mom, goes to talk to him, check in on him. She wants to get to know him without revealing who she is. Chloe gets the wrong impression and she goes to apologize, and she then sends him her sex video. This is kind of her MO with guys, I guess. Sarah and Raul are losing brand deals, they're losing money, and they might have to move out of their apartment because they're not acting like a couple, and so, those revenue streams are drying up. Joel tells Ivan that when he came out, his parents kicked him out of the house. He struggled to find his way until he came to Madrid and got help from an organization where Omar worked. And Omar let him stay with him, and they were both rock bottom at that point. Omar due to depression and Joel because of his parents, and they fell madly in love. But now Joel wonders if, there was a bit of codependence in there. Joel says that Omar never really talked about his trauma, and that's when Ivan tells Joel that Samuel actually died in Omar's arms. Omar is still taking medication, and I really hope we don't get an addiction storyline. Omar just can't seem to get a break. And anyway, the couple do talk and they patch things up. Everyone is still at this horse race that I don't care about, and oh my god, these episodes are so long. We don't need hour-long episodes, but okay. Chloe comes on to Ivan at the party, and she comes on pretty strong. Ivan's flesh is kind of weak in the moment, and he gives in, but he ends up not being into it at all, so nothing really happens, even though Chloe practically begs. Her mother hears them in the stall then, and she also puts a stop to it, and tells Chloe that Ivan is her brother. By the way, I think they made out and did a couple of things. It's just that they didn't have sex. It's pretty bad and gross either way. Sarah tells Ivan that he can move in with her and Raul, take a break from his home that reminds him a lot of his past and his trauma. This is also a way for her and Raul to have a rich person to help them out with their bills. It also kind of protects her from being hit, so I don't blame her. And she also sells it as then we can keep an eye on Ivan and hope that he doesn't get to the truth of what happened to him, who ran him over, and that he doesn't ask too many questions. In episode 3, Omar is running the helpline app where kids write in with their issues and they reach out for help, but it's obviously anonymous. Isa is in bed, depressed after what happened with her horse. It got poisoned. Her mom tells her that it's their business rivals because they want them to hand over the business. Chloe wants nothing to do with her mother's gold-digging ways. Getting Ivan means that she gets some of his inheritance money. Eric is still trying to get to know Chloe, but she's not interested. She finds him cheesy. The school director pinches Didak's phone and downloads the contents onto his computer, and it's actually some kind of surveillance, and he listens to Didak and Isa talking. They decide to break up, but because they were only together for like 5 seconds, we don't care. They do get back together later. Remember, as I said, the director is also an undercover cop, so he's kind of surveilling them to get information on their families, on their crime families. One of the teachers who sees that Sarah is in a bad situation puts on these self-defense classes, and she's inspired by the bad vibes that she senses between Raul and Sarah, and since Sarah is unable to leave her situation at the moment, the very least she could do is protect herself. Carmen finds Ivan at a party, and why is she dressed like this? Ivan is still listening to Patrick's voicemail, but it seems as though he eventually deletes it and he dances with his mom. Joel arrives at the party then, and Ivan is crushing hard. They dance together and get really close, and Omar sees a photo of them on social media, which makes him panic, and he goes to the party trying to find them, but he gets distracted and does other things. Eric gets involved in a pretty violent standoff with the police. They're trying to protect a social building and they're throwing chairs and things out of the window. It gets very violent, and eventually Rocio, whose mom made her promise not to go to that building, ends up getting arrested. Nico, who actually has a thing with Sonia, ends up hooking up with Chloe at the party. You can see by the expression on her face that she's not into it at all. She's been pretending all along when she's hooking up with these guys. Eric walks in to see Nico and Chloe had hooked up, and Sonia sees that they hooked up as well, even though she was trying to be a friend to Chloe. It's just a whole mess. Chloe hooks up with everybody, basically. But then we see her at the end of the party, and she's really sad. She's crying, walking home while she's listening to the playlist that Eric made for her. The playlist that she called Really Cheesy, by the way. Raul also proposes to Sarah on social media, but we don't get to hear her answer this episode. Okay, so about Joel, the strange or confusing thing about him is that he's getting really close with Ivan, but he still goes home to Omar, and he's a loving and intimate partner, and he cares for Omar. I believe that he genuinely loves Omar, but this relationship has maybe run its course, and he wants to try this thing out with Ivan. He's a little confused, which, sure, he's a kid, it happens. Episode 4 opens with Eric self-harming with a lighter. Rocia is let out of the police station, and her mother tells her that she needs to get it together. She can't keep pulling strings to get her out of trouble. Joel hasn't been responding to Ivan's texts, and Ivan is as confused as we are as to what is going on. Ivan says that they should just be friends, and then Ivan decides that he might apply for an exchange program to go and study in South Africa. We get a flashback then of when Omar was really struggling. He climbed up onto a ledge about to end it when Joel came riding by on his bike and talked him down. So yeah, they trauma bonded a little bit. Eric tries to apologize for leaving Rocia in the lurch. She's over it, and then he starts freaking out, revealing some issues with his parent, and then he starts hitting himself until Nico comes to calm him down. When things don't go well, it's like he can't regulate his emotions, and then he just gets frustrated and he hits himself, or he hurts himself. Quite heartbreaking, actually. Also, Rocia's mom is a judge, and she's somehow in cahoots with Isa's dad, Martin, who's back in town. Joel tells Ivan that he feels like he's hurting both him and Omar, even though he's trying not to. He needs to do right by Omar because he loves him. Shame, Joel is such a good kid and he's trying to do the right thing, but he's really conflicted and confused. Eric and Chloe hook up, and it goes really wrong when he says that she's as broken as he is and that she doesn't like herself just the way he doesn't like himself. This really upsets her, maybe touches a nerve, and she walks away. Didak tries to tell Isa that her dad is corrupt, but she doesn't want to hear it. She's just excited to have her dad back in town. She does ask him about the rumor that he's bribing Rocia's mom, but just then the police raid the party that they're at and everybody takes off running and it's chaos. Omar asks Joel if he's in love with Ivan, and Joel says he doesn't know and he doesn't want to leave Omar, but Omar tells him that he doesn't want him to stay out of a sense of obligation. It's a really sweet moment, actually, where Omar says that they love each other, but Joel should go and be with Ivan. And he goes to Ivan and they're finally together. Only not all is well back home. Omar's roommate Dalmar walks in to find that he'd OD'd on pills. I really hate that this happened right after Joel went to be with Ivan because he's going to blame himself when it's really not his fault. And I was really hoping that Omar was going to be on the mend, but I guess that's not how it works with PTSD and depression. It's going to take time for him to get better. In episode 5, Omar ends up being okay. His roommate manages to wake him up in the shower, and Joel comes back and asks if he can sleep on the couch until he finds some other living situation. He also makes breakfast for all the roommates. They are really close friends as well, but yeah, it is a little complicated now. Raul is watching a sexy video of Chloe, and then he tries to pressure Sarah into having sex, but she can't, and he gets quite cross with her. He accuses her of never being in the mood and to just leave him if that's what she wants, and he then apologizes as he usually does. At the party that got raided the other night, it seemed to have been a setup because there was a suspicious number of dealers at the party just before the raid. Omar comes home early and he finds Ivan and Joel having sex in his bed. He chases Joel out and then he and Ivan have a talk, and Ivan says that he should just say the word and he'll end things with Joel so that Omar and Joel can work things out. He has so many problems at the moment, he doesn't want to screw over a friend. Ivan tells Joel later that maybe now's not the right time for them. They really need to throw Omar a lifeline, and yeah, they'll see to their own thing another time. Eric is having a really difficult time. He's coming down from a manic episode. Nico's parents assure him that they won't abandon him and they want to get him help, but Eric is resistant. He doesn't want to be given meds and turned into a zombie, he says. The Sarah-Raul situation turns into a nightmare. See, Sarah pretended to befriend Chloe and invited her over for a girls' night, but it turns out that she just wants to use Chloe for a threesome to please Raul. Chloe is really offended because, yeah, Sarah tries to record it as well without Chloe's knowledge. This girl is such a dummy. Yes, she's a victim, but she's such a dummy. Anyway, the girls talk and they decide that they're going to go through it anyway. Their plan to punish Raul. I mean, Chloe is a good friend because she does want to help Sarah. What starts out as a kind of sweet time together between Ivan and Carmen as he goes through his father's things turns really sinister when they both take drugs together, and then she starts making out with him, imagining that it's his dad. Luckily, she comes to before things go any further, but really, Elite, did we really need an incest storyline? Remember that this poor kid's dad hooked up with his boyfriend last season. Oh man, this is such a mess. Anyway, Issa's dad tells her that he's putting one of the businesses in her name, and I'm pretty sure that there's a catch. Sarah, obviously, stabs Chloe in the back, accusing her of leaking the video of her and Raul, of Chloe and Raul. The plan was just to out Raul as a cheater, but now Sarah has thrown Chloe under the bus by telling the whole school that she's easy and she just did it for attention. Joel tells Omar that he and Ivan are taking a minute away from each other right now so that they can focus on Omar getting well. Issa's father wants a building to be torn down, but she doesn't agree because people are currently living in that building and they need to find another place to stay. Her father manipulates her into signing the eviction notice anyway. Turns out Omar and Joel's home is in the building that, is going to be torn down, so they get served an eviction notice. Sarah finally breaks up with Raul and he tries to hit her, but she manages to tackle him to the ground. This is such a silly storyline, but okay. Nico finally convinces Eric to go into therapy if he wants to keep staying at the house, because Eric became kind of violent and he shoved Nico, resulting in a minor head injury. The boys, Dalmar, Omar, and Joel confront Issa about their eviction notice. Didak tells her that the eviction notice was signed by Rocio's mother, and Issa's dad had also handed her a briefcase full of money. That doesn't sound like a coincidence. So if you're not quite getting what's going on here, Rocio's mother is a judge, and she took a bribe from Issa's father to sign off on the tearing down of a building where people actually live. So yeah, that's pretty corrupt. Ivan wants to talk to Carmen about what happened between them the other night, but she doesn't want to hear it. Chloe does overhear them though, and through listening, she finds out that they fooled around with each other. Now, she knows that this is mother and son, so she's rather traumatized. Issa tells her father that she wants to put a stop to the eviction, and Chloe, in her drunken state, tells Ivan that they're siblings. Raul finds Chloe in the club and he takes her upstairs. He ends up making a video saying that he and Sarah were already broken up when the video with him and Chloe came out, so they didn't cheat, and that Chloe is a lovely girl and to please respect her. This is going to be his new girlfriend now, I guess. Eric and Rocia have a talk and she tries to give him a change of perspective to see that he's not a failure, and she opens up about not being able to trust her family, and they make out. The eviction gets reversed and Eric decides to seek some help to get well. At the end of the episode, the director cop reveals that he's undercover and he asks Didak to help him from the inside so that he can finally put Martin, Issa's father, away for good. In episode 7, Omar wakes up from a nightmare and he's still going through it. I'm sorry, but I'm so tired of the storyline. But poor Joel, he's such a sweetheart. They have a moment and they agree that they're, attracted to each other in that moment. But they'd also agree that it would be confusing and a very bad idea for them to hook up. And they shouldn't. But they do. The roommate sees them and he later asks Joel if he knows what he's doing because Omar is under the impression that they're back together, but they're really not. It was just a moment on Joel's part. Raul and Chloe are playing house and he sure moved on really quickly. He gets her to clean up her image and she wears an actual school uniform for the first time. Raul brings lunch for Chloe at school and he talks to Sarah, almost wanting to make her jealous. While she's over at the house picking up her things, he also does something on her phone, like he makes her refollow him so that she can see all the updates with him and Chloe. Omar makes dinner and he tells Joel that, he knows that they're not together, but it's nice to just have dinner together. And they promise again that they won't have sex, but they end up having sex again. Rocio is staying over at Nico's house because she's having issues with her corrupt mother. She sneaks into Eric's bed and she tries to get with him. She makes the first move and then they start making out. But because he's on antipsychotic medication, he's unable to do anything more. I really hate that she went to his room like that because Nico had already warned her. He'd already said that it wasn't a good idea for her to stay at the house because Eric is pretty fragile. And even though it won't be her fault if Eric goes off the deep end, this just could have been avoided. Especially because Eric seems to be doing quite well otherwise, like he's getting better. He then, out of, humiliation or the fact that he doesn't like the way that the medication affects him, makes a bad decision to throw out his meds and he takes drugs. Dalmar, the other roommate, suggests to Joel that Omar might be manipulating him, that he's doing everything he can to keep Joel there because he's still in love with him, and Joel is a pushover because he sees the best in Omar. He just stays. I also don't think that Omar manipulating him is meant, maliciously. I think Omar is just going through it and he's not ready to let go. And it seems as though Joel is starting to realize that. Eric goes on an absolute bender and Chloe comes to meet him then and they have sex. She takes a photo of her panties on the floor and then she sends that photo to her mom. She seems very not right afterwards as she's like in the shower trying to clean herself off. She's fighting with her mom because her mom thinks that she's losing herself in this relationship with Raul. And this photo is kind of like saying, well, oh, is this who you remember me to be? Is this who you want me to be? Because her image is a little bit cleaned up with Raul. Joey attacks Ivan and they agree to go over to Ivan's place and they have sex. Omar has a meltdown when he sees that Joey isn't back. He knows that he's with Ivan. Isa knows that Didak was up in the middle of the night taking photos of some private documents and that he's working against her somehow. Ivan confronts Carmen and asks what she wants. What will it take to get her to leave? He doesn't want a relationship with her. It can't be a coincidence that she shows up right as his father dies. This shameless woman settles on 2 million euros to get her to go away. End of the episode, Omar makes the first very good decision in a long time and he decides to go and stay with his parents for a bit. In episode 8, the final episode of season 7, police are investigating somebody who fell from a building, supposedly haven't taken their own lives, so they probably jumped. Nico's family is worried about Eric who hasn't come home and Rocio is panicking. Nico is cross with Rocio because he says that he told her not to mess with Eric. She couldn't have known that he was going to go off the deep end and Eric should have some responsibility to take his own medication, but still, girl, just go home. And also, Eric is unwell, so he can't really be held fully responsible at this point still. Eric eventually comes home and Nico can tell that he's been using and he tells him to get out. His parents have done all they can. They've given him a roof over his head, they've shown him love, but Eric's just not doing his part. He needs to leave. Isa confronts Didak and he tells her about the investigation into her family and he takes her to the station. The director of the school / undercover cop tells her that they were actually investigating the shooting at first, but then they uncovered some unsavory business involving her family, corruption, kidnapping, possibly murder, etc. Isa refuses to get involved and betray her family. Rocio does later come and ask her for help because she thinks that her mother is involved and Issa's like, no, I'm staying out of it. She does go and tell her dad though that the police have been investigating them for months and she tries to get them to clean house, saying that they can't keep conducting business like they're criminals. Raul visits Chloe at school and does this guy not have a job? Get a job, Raul. Chloe is still attached to her mother who texts her, even though, Chloe's angry at her mother. And Raul convinces her to block her. In fact, he takes her phone and he blocks Chloe's mother and he tells her that it's for her own good. So yeah, the isolation and the control has already started. Sara texts Raul to follow to the bathroom, and then she has sex with him and records them. I don't know what's with all these recorded sex tapes this season. I'm not into it at all. Eric is in very bad shape. He's leaving town, he's having hallucinations, and then he starts hurting himself again. He ends up in an abandoned building and he wanders around aimlessly before going up to the roof. And before he does anything, he does text the helpline. Ivan suggests that Joel comes with him on his trip to South Africa, and Ivan thinks that Joel deserves somebody who can look after him for a change. Sara tells Carmen about the abuse and how she's worried about Chloe. Raul is isolating her from everybody, and that is his MO. Chloe sees the video of Sara and Raul having sex, and she breaks things off. He attacks and threatens her then when she tries to leave, but just then Carmen comes over and she refuses to leave. She wants to talk to both of them, Raul and Chloe. Dalmar, who doesn't get nearly enough screen time, has the most sense out of everyone on the show. Joel asks for his and Omar's advice if he should go with Ivan, and what would that mean, because he'd have to put school on hold. Omar is the romantic one who says, well, if you love him, maybe you should go, but Dalmar says that Joey needs to quit letting guys drag him along. He needs to finally live for himself and do his own thing, and if this thing with Ivan is real, and he still feels things when Ivan gets back, then sure, they can pick up where they left off, but he needs to kind of quit going around being a kept man. It's a little harsh, sure, but I think that Joel really needed to hear this. Ivan leaves for the airport and he texts Joel hoping that he'll come with him, but obviously Joel doesn't end up going. So at this point, there are several people on roofs. It's Eric, although we know that Nico's trying to talk him down, Raul and Carmen, who are fighting, and Rocio's mother, who's on the roof, and she's been set up by Martin, Isa's father. One of these is going to be the body that we saw at the beginning of the episode. Can I also just say that I really, really liked Nico and his storyline this season. They actually gave him something to do. It was a substantial storyline with him and his cousin, and it was pretty good. It was a huge improvement from last season. Isa ends up wearing a wire when she meets with her dad, and she helps the police eventually take him down. Rocio's mother gets arrested, and the crime operation has been foiled. Carmen ends up pushing Raul off the roof, and good riddance, because he also goes to attack her when she confronts him. Joel comes home all heartbroken because he didn't go with Ivan, and he asks Omar if he's going to be staying over for dinner, and Omar says his parents' home is pretty far and it's in the evening and it's complicated to get there. And when Joel says, well, you can stay here, Omar says, well, no, that wouldn't be the best idea. And he leaves, which is good. Shame, I hope we get a good story next season for Joel about him finding his independence and being his own person. I really liked him. He's a good kid with the best intentions, but he's a little lost. So I hope he finds his feet and makes some more friends next season. At the end of the episode, a few things happen. Eric comes home finally and everybody's happy to see him. And Omar goes to therapy, but he's looking a lot more hopeful this time. And then, oh my God, at the end of the episode, we see that Dalmar was out on a delivery and he was just so happened to be on his phone, on his camera, and he recorded Raul falling from the roof, and not only that, he recorded Carmen at the top of the roof, like looking down. So yeah, Dalmar has video directly implicating Carmen in Raul's death. Yeah, and that is season 7 of Elite. If you have seen it, feel free to share your thoughts, and thank you for watching.